All right, quick discussion of the quiz after 3-1. Doesn't matter whether you got version A or version B. The comments will really be the same. Most of the problems actually were the same. There were some differences. With this first line, 2/5 x plus 10, this is the y-intercept. If you try to go up to and over 5, there's no room for it on the grid. So you're just going to have to go the other way, down to and over 5, which most people figured out, and the line should be there. Y equals negative 3x. This has a slope of negative 3 and an intercept of 0. Okay, so you go to 0 on the y-axis. It has to go through that point, and from there, down 3 over 1, down 3 over 1, and there's your line. Okay. For number 2, I think the easiest way to graph this, well, I'm not going to go through the easiest way, but if you turn this into slope-intercept form, which a lot of people did correctly and some people did incorrectly, let's subtract 2x from both sides. You'll get 5y equals negative 2x plus 20, and then divide everything by 5 means divide everything by 5. So you'll get y equals negative 2/5 x plus 4. So there's a y-intercept of 4 right there. This is wrong. And then a slope of negative 2/5, down 2 and over 5, down 2 and over 5. So it has an x-intercept of positive 10. Where I scribbled out there actually is the correct line, and the solid one is wrong. X equals negative 3, excuse me for bumping the camera, x equals negative 3. X on the x-axis, 1, 2, 3, negative, and then it must be a vertical line, vertical, vertical. Even though it says x, and I know people think, oh, x-axis, horizontal. No, you got to know when it says x equals, it's going to be a vertical line through negative 3, through that number on the x-axis. Okay. Hey, folks, those of you who are still getting these questions wrong, these are going to continue to show up every time we have an algebra review quiz, and they're going to continue to trouble you unless you get this right. Perpendicular. Perpendicular means they're meeting at a right angle. If they're meeting at right angles, obviously these two lines cannot have the same slope. They must have different slopes, right? In fact, the slope of any line perpendicular to a line with a slope of positive 6 must have a slope of negative 1/6. Well, there are 3 lines here with slopes of negative 1/6. And I'm going to say this again, it does not matter what the y-intercept is. When I'm asking questions about perpendicular and parallel lines, you need to train yourself to ignore the y-intercepts. They're irrelevant. They're just distracting. It's all about the slopes of the lines. So every line that has a slope of negative 1/6 will be perpendicular to this one. When I'm asking for parallel, I'm looking for every line that has a slope exactly the same as that, like this one and this one. Okay, moving on. I can't tell you how many people wrote this answer for line A, y equals negative 3/2 plus 1. I marked that wrong because it is wrong. Because what is it missing? It's missing an x. And there are way too many people not writing down that x. So many people that I honestly don't know if you think it matters if it's there or not. It matters, folks, and you need to know that it matters. So do not forget the x there, okay? Negative 3/2 is the slope from here down 3 over 2, and then 1 is the y-intercept. And then this equation is y equals 0, okay? This line goes through lots of different x coordinates, negative 5, negative 4, negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, and so on. It can't possibly be x equals something because it goes through x equals lots of things. Okay, but every single one of these points has a y coordinate of 0, negative 4, 0, negative 3, 0, negative 2, 0, negative 1, 0, and so on. Every single point on this line has a y value of 0. That's why the equation is y equals 0. Again, I know sometimes you see horizontal line and you think, oh, that's just like the x-axis. I'm going to write down x equals something. Wrong. Thanks for playing. The answer is y equals 0. This problem here, too many people Still getting the slope calculation, upside down. The slope calculation is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Slope is -5/2. Okay. Now, once you find the slope, write down or think at least to yourself y equals mx plus b form and put that -5/2 in for the slope. There's way too many people who still really don't know how to do this problem. I hope you're paying attention. Once you have the slope, plug that slope value in for m, like I did here, and then plug in for x and y, either one of these ordered pairs. Doesn't matter which one, you should get the same value for b in the end. Make sure you plug in the y for the y and the x for the x. Okay. Now what I did here is I imagined that this was 43 over 1, and I multiplied the fractions straight across. 5 times 43 is 215. 2 times 1 is 2. And there's a negative there. So to solve for b, I've got to add 215 halves to both sides of this equation. I turned the 42 into 84 halves. How did I do that? By multiplying by 2 over 2, right? 215 halves plus 84 halves is 299 halves, which is a perfectly good answer. If you wrote 149.5, that's the same exact value, so that's fine. Okay. I crossed all that stuff because I wanted separate answers here. I didn't need the equation of the line. Okay. I saw more than one person doing this sort of goofy thing. They drew a picture and they made this point here right next to the origin. They made this an x value of like 41, and then made this an x value of 43, and then they called that -41 over there, and fooled themselves into thinking that this was the y-axis. Hey, folks, that's a really confused picture. And so they plotted 41, 47 up here, and 43, 42 down there, and they drew a line. And if that's 41, 47, and they thought, well, that point on the y-axis, that's not a whole lot more than 47. In fact, that must be up, about another 2.5 units, because I'm only going backwards 1. So 47 plus 2.5 is 49.5. Hey, this is a horribly confused picture. Do not try to use a picture of a graph to solve a problem like this. These points are way too far away from the y-axis for a graph to be of any use to you. You've got to do it algebraically, okay, without the picture of the graph. All right, these problems were different depending on whether you had version A or version B, but I will make some general comments, which is, it matters whether the answer is positive or negative, and there were too many people being careless with negative signs, especially in problem number 7. Whether you had version A or version B, too many people being careless. The answer, I'm pretty sure for both versions, turned out to be negative. That's what you had to give me, okay? If not, you lost a point. It was a 2-point problem, but you should have lost a point if you didn't give me a negative answer, and if you didn't consider yourself lucky. I should have taken one away. I do like to see people reducing answers as much as possible, but this year I'm being a little bit more lenient about that. But here, let's talk about this problem here. 140 twelfths is the exact correct answer. That can be reduced all the way to 35 thirds. If you're going to write that as a decimal, 11.6 repeating, not 11.67 repeating. There should be no sevens in your answer anywhere. 11.67 repeating is 11.676767, and that's just wrong. And I don't care how many sixes you write. If you write a 7 at the end and put a bar over all of that, it's wrong. Okay? Now, if you don't put the bar over it and you leave the 7 out there, it's still wrong. Okay? There should be no 7s anywhere if I'm asking you for the exact value, which I did. And I am going to be strict about exact values when I ask for them this year. Okay? Reducing to the smallest possible fraction, I'm going to let that slide a little bit. But I want you to learn about how to properly express an exact value as a decimal. And this would be fine. You don't need any more sixes than just that first one, as long as you put a bar over it. Okay? That's it for this quiz.